Hello, and welcome to the 8th episode of Enchanting Economics in New Mexico. This podcast is a production of Bieber, the recognized expert in socioeconomic data for the state of New Mexico. I'm your host, Rayanne McKernan and Sarun Lytel, and today we're going to be continuing on with part 6 in our series of COVID-19 effects on our economy and its industries. Here with us is Daniela Baca. She's the campus director for UNM Children's Center. Daniela, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So for those who aren't familiar with UNM Children's Campus, it houses several programs. Can you give our listeners a quick overview of what you offer the community, as well as maybe an idea of how many families that you guys serve on a daily basis?
Sure. The Children's Campus provides early childhood services for the children of students, staff, and faculty of the university. We offer a unique 5-year continuity of care model for families, which essentially means that to the extent possible, the children and the teachers will remain together as a cohort for 5 years, and then they move together each year from each of the different aged classrooms. So through an infant classroom, a young toddler classroom, an older toddler classroom, and eventually they'll matriculate into our pre-K and our pre-K classrooms. In addition to that, we provide a wide variety of other programming options, aside from our traditional program, which is usually open Mondays through Friday, 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. So for example, we have a state-funded early pre-K and pre-K program that's available for eligible 3 and 4-year-old children. We offer a federally funded Childcare Access Means Parents in School program that's also better known as C-Campus to our families. That particular program makes it possible for student parents to utilize our program on a sliding fee basis, and many of our student parents actually qualify for free or reduced care for their children while they're participating in classes or university-sponsored activities. That program also allows them to participate in a drop-in care program that's available Monday through Fridays from 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m., as well as our evening care program that not very many people know about, but is available from Monday through Thursday from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. during the fall and spring semesters. In addition to that, we collaborate with a number of organizations on campus to provide programming that is specific to student parents. For example, we work with the Global Parenting Cubs, a student chartered organization on campus, to offer a number of student parent study nights each semester. We actually have a dedicated student parent study space, and those student parents will come in, bring their children. We provide dinner, and we take care of the kids while they meet with their study groups and work, especially like during finals time and things like that. We also collaborate with the UNM Women's Resource Center, Student Family Housing, and Student Activities to offer events such as our free family-friendly movie screenings that take place in the theater at the UNM Student Union Building. That's a really popular event and usually sells out pretty quickly. We also have been working recently with the Dean of Students Office to offer student parents free on-site tax preparation coupled with free childcare so that they can have a place for their children to go while they're working on preparing their taxes. Some of the other initiatives that we offer are a school-age and middle school summer camp program. There are 4 2-week camps that include nature camps, water camps, sport camps, and adventure camps. Throughout the summer, our campers will travel all over New Mexico and participate in a variety of activities, including things like horseback riding, caving, kayaking, and rafting. The middle school group will also do overnights at some of these locations. These programs are really highly sought after, and oftentimes we find families lining up at 2 a.m. on registration day just to secure a space for their child. One of the newest programs that we offer at the Children's Campus is our high school internship component. This program focuses on introducing high school students to the field of early childhood, as well as to the University of New Mexico, and ultimately it completes our goal of having a birth to college pipeline, specifically at the Children's Campus. In addition to that, we offer a toy and resource lending library for the community. Individuals are able to come in and check out a variety of materials for their children. When their children are done with it, they can bring it back and check something else out. It saves parents money in that they don't have to go out and buy additional materials every few weeks as their children tire of some of the things that they have. We also offer, as I mentioned earlier, the on-site study space, and with that is access to laptops, free internet, and free printing, and that helps to minimize travel for our student parents back and forth to main campus. Overall, the Children's Campus is licensed for 271 children, but on any given day, because we provide full-time and part-time options as well as the drop-in care, we can provide services for upwards of 300 children daily. That being said, our current waiting list is now well over 1,700 children long. There's just a huge need for care in the UNM community right now, and we're hopeful that we'll be able to secure funding for our proposed expansion of the Children's Campus here pretty soon, and hopefully that will help to begin at least to address some of the extensive need in our community for care.
Yeah, wow. Well, hopefully you guys get that funding, because it really sounds like you are an invaluable resource to not only the student parents, but faculty and staff as well. Plus just community members. I know I wasn't a UNM employee at the time, and I did use your toy lending library for my children. And it was amazing, because you're right, kids get bored with their toys. And so to constantly be able to change them out was such a relief.
Right. Well, and I think the neat thing with that is that in addition to being able to swap them out, parents have access to a lot of information from our staff who are very knowledgeable about developmentally appropriate practice. So if you're wanting to work with your child on a specific skill, they're more than welcome to stop in and talk with us, and we can help point them in the right direction and send them home with something that will help to develop that at home as well. So
yeah. So the main point of what we're focusing on now is obviously coronavirus. And that really started to spread and affect daily life in March, I would say. At what point did it start to affect you guys and your operations and your families? And when did you make the decision to close on-campus support?
Well, we had been watching it for some time before it had actually made its way to New Mexico. But we too began to feel kind of the direct effects of coronavirus in early March. We generally plan an overnight staff retreat each year during UNM spring break. And we focus on goal setting, team building, and training for our staff. And this year we were scheduled to go to Glorieta Conference Center March 19th and 20th out in northern New Mexico. Unfortunately, kind of the way that things started to work out with the virus, we had to make the difficult decision to cancel that retreat. And little did we know at the time that would kind of prove to be the first of many cancellations and disappointments in terms of decisions that we were going to have to make as a result of the coronavirus. Shortly after having had to make that decision to cancel our retreat, just in order to ensure the well-being of our staff, we also had to make the decision to scale back services at the Children's Campus, and we began limiting care to families who were required to report, only to those that were required to report to work or to school beginning the week of March 16th. And as early as March 19th, additional information had come out in regards to the spread of the virus, and we had to make the decision to close the Children's Campus for the duration of UNM's extended spring break. During that time, we were in constant communication with the state's new early childhood department, with licensing, just really monitoring the situation. And it just became really clear that, out of an abundance of caution, we were going to have to close the Children's Campus through May 15th for our regular operation.
And even though you're closed at the on-campus facility, you and your staff are still working pretty hard from home or remotely. Can you tell us how you guys have been aiding families during this time with educational and social support, if any?
Absolutely. We've actually, sometimes it feels like we've been working harder now that we're working remotely than we did, when we were on site. As you're aware, along with other educators across the country, we've had to adapt really quickly and navigate the difficult transition from working with the children in the comfort and the familiarity of the Children's Campus community to working remotely with them, something that we'd never really done before. We actually really try to limit, the use of technology on site, and we actually have a cell phone free zone at the children's campus where everybody is asked to put their cell phones away as soon as they step on the premises. And so this was a very different situation for us. But our amazing and dedicated teaching staff, they've continued to write lesson plans, provide developmentally appropriate curriculum for the children, and they've stayed in constant communication with the families and are offering a variety of activities. They've been hosting remote scavenger hunts, holding classroom meetings, dance parties, sponsoring show and tells and read alouds. They've even been doing parent-teacher conferences through this time. So they're still continuing to operate and do what they do. It's not ideal by any means, but they love having the opportunity to at least stay connected with the children, even if it has to be virtually. And in turn, the families have really been incredibly flexible and understanding. They've welcomed our teachers into their homes through a variety of remote platforms, oftentimes kind of fumbling through learning how to use them right along with us. But it's really helped us to maintain those critical relationships that we have with the children and the families. I'm curious what some of the interesting feedback might be that you've gotten, because,
this has definitely been a learning experience. And I have children, like I said, they're in elementary school, but I swear I will never complain about a school supply list again. I am not a teacher. Anything you want, you will get from now on. I am not a teacher.
We've absolutely heard that from a number of our families, and they just, they don't know how our staff do it on a daily basis. But overall, we've definitely gotten a lot of really positive feedback in regards to the supports that our teaching staff have put in place, and the way that they've continued to connect with the children and families at the children's campus. But that being said, each of our families have their own individual challenges. Many of them are balancing the needs of their family while attempting to work and take classes at home. Others have been identified as essential personnel and are still having to report to work, and have had to find alternate care for their children. In addition, to our staff stepping in to provide activities and support remotely, we've actually continued to work with families that are in need of care, and have been able to pair some of our student employees who aren't necessarily working right now with families that to be able to help them watch their children so they can continue to work and take their classes during this time. We've also been working really closely with Jessica Kelly in Chancellor Roth's office, and she's helped us to pair a number of families with some of the resources that have been available out in the community as well. The Children's Campus is also providing a variety of resources and supports for families that we've been adding to our dedicated COVID supports page on our website, as well as on our Facebook page, and that's intended to help families with their overall well-being, their mental health, childcare access, food insecurity, and activities that they can do while they're at home. And at the end of the day, families are taking things day by day. The children, they miss their friends and they're excited to see them when they have their virtual class meetings. Oftentimes they're not ready to say goodbye, and that's probably the hardest part of those remote meetings. But overall, I think that we're all ready to just return to some semblance of normal.
Yeah. We did an episode with UNM IT's Chief Information Officer, Dwayne Arruti, a week ago, I guess it was. And he mentioned that you guys were working on a plan to assist UNMH staff if necessary. Can you tell us what that was about?
Absolutely. Our senior management team at the Children's Campus, in collaboration with Jessica Kelly from Chancellor Roth's office and Abra Altman from President Stokes' office, got together pretty quickly as this thing was unfolding. And we've been working tirelessly to establish what's been called the Emergency Care Plan. This Emergency Care Plan is basically set up to support the Children's Campus in reopening with very little notice for Tier 1 hospital employees and other essential workers in the event of a surge in COVID-19 cases in the state of New Mexico. As part of that process, we had to develop an emergency care protocol that's very specific to how the Children's Campus will operate during this time, ensuring that we're in compliance with national guidelines as well as all of our licensing requirements. We were also needing to establish a supply chain for necessary PPE. That's been a really hot topic, but if we were to reopen, that's something that we would definitely have to have on site. along with other essential items that have become harder to get these days, like hand sanitizer, Clorox bleach, those types of things. So we were able to set up that supply chain. And then with the support of UNMIT, as you mentioned, we transitioned both our registration and billing process to an online process. Previously, that was something where families would come in, they take care of all of the paperwork, everything that's required of us by licensing to have on file. And so that was really a critical piece to trying to make this work. In addition, we've continued to work with UNM Human Resources, as well as the state's new early childhood department, to create a pool of emergency care staff who are not necessarily employed at the children's campus right now, but who have been screened and are ready to support the children's campus if we're asked to reopen for emergency care. And then this process in general has really helped us to reflect on our current practices, as well as the safety measures that we already have in place, but also to think more critically about future preparedness for circumstances that may arise and require this level of intensity surrounding safety measures. And this ultimately was just a huge undertaking, and it just wouldn't have been possible without the support of my team. Lisa Ortiz, our Education and Development Manager, and Victoria Demas, our Program Specialist. We spent countless hours working to make that plan a reality. And then also, Jessica Kelly from Chancellor Roth's office, who was invaluable, and she was really instrumental in coordinating all of the moving parts and making sure that we were all talking and communicating effectively. In addition to, Abra Altman from the President's Office, as I said, the Early Childhood Department, the Provost's Office, Cheo Torres from Student Affairs, UNMIT, UNM Human Resources, and there was just a number of folks that were involved in putting this together so that we could provide support for our frontline workers if it was necessary.
What have the discussions been like about reopening the children's campus post-coronavirus been like? What are some of the things that you think will need to change?
Well, it's definitely not going to look anything like what we're used to, at least for the foreseeable future. I've had the pleasure of being able to participate in calls. Initially, the Early Childhood Department, Cabinet Secretary Gerginski was hosting daily calls with early childhood providers in the state, trying to keep us abreast of what was going on. Those have now moved to once a week. But that has been critical in really learning about what's going on in the state and things to plan for. At this point, the children's campus is scheduled to remain closed for regular operations through May 15th. And we'll look at making decisions on whether or not we're going to need to extend that closure based on further instructions that we receive from the governor's office, the early childhood department, as well as university leadership. Information will then go out to families as soon as we have a better idea of how those instructions are going to specifically impact the children's campus. But, as we start to move closer to May 15th, we actually are taking that emergency care plan and transitioning that into our reopening protocol. It's, as I mentioned earlier, it's really important to note that when we reopen, it's still going to look very different than what we're accustomed to. We really are going to have to keep safety in mind, and based on current licensing guidelines, we really will only be allowed to have a total of 10 individuals in each classroom, including adults, which is really going to limit our classroom capacities. So for example, in our school age classroom, normally we can have up to 32 children plus our staff in there. But according to current guidelines, we can only have 10 individuals total. So it's going to definitely look different. In addition, only staff and children are going to be permitted to enter the facility, with, drop off and pickup being done outside of the building. That's something that for us is unheard of. We have an open door policy for our families. People are welcome, our families are welcome to come and go and have lunch with our children or help them to rest at rest time or do an activity with our kids. And that's just something that we're not going to be able to do for a little while. We're going to have to do temperature checks of staff and children before they're allowed to enter the center. And at this point, anyone over the age of 3 will be required to wear a face covering of some kind while on the premises. So these, along with a number of other safety precautions, are going to have to be in place until such time as we can safely transition away from them. And, they're definitely not ideal. And when I said 3-year-olds wearing face coverings, that actually changed. It was 2-year-olds initially, and they moved it to 3-year-olds. And those of us that have had young children, keeping a face covering on a 2-year-old or even a 3-year-old is definitely going to be challenging, along with trying to maintain that social distance. So there's definitely going to be some challenges as we move forward, but we're definitely committed to the health and safety and overall well-being of all of our children's campus community. And hopefully in time, we'll be able to begin to relax some of these guidelines and return to, what we're used to, that community that's built on relationships and collaborations, and it'll feel a little bit better soon.
Yeah. And speaking, you mentioned that UNM is closed until May 15th as of right now. I know there are a lot of school-age children, including one of my own, who was really looking forward to your summer camps. Have you guys made any decisions about them yet? Or what do you think in general about summer camps happening? Is it a realistic possibility?
We've really been putting a lot of thought in that, and we've held off as long as we possibly could to make a decision, because that's one of our favorite times of the year as well. As I mentioned earlier, we take our campers all over New Mexico and give them a lot of really, really neat experiences. But unfortunately, I think just based on where we're at right now, we've had to make the difficult decision to cancel a few of our sessions. We're not canceling the whole summer, but we are going to cancel our first and second session along with our intercession. So ultimately through the July holiday. But we're going to continue to monitor the situation, and hopefully things will change. And we may be able to at least have our July camps. But right now it's difficult for everybody. We can't even necessarily schedule field trips at this point because many of those locations are closed. And I don't know what they're going to look like once things start to reopen, whether or not they're even going to still exist. So it's definitely been challenging, and we're really sad about it. But we're going to continue to kind of be hopeful that we'll be able to do something in July.
Hopefully, fingers crossed. Sarun, did you have anything you wanted to ask?
Well, I don't have children, so I can't really relate to any of this. So.
Sarun basically is a child. He's all of what, 23?
But if you're thinking about having a child soon, put yourself on the waiting list for the children's campus.
Yes, seriously.
Important.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that wraps it up for us here at Enchanting Economics in New Mexico. Don't forget, you can check us out at Beber, that's bber.unm.edu, or on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn under @UNM Beber. Thanks for listening, everyone. Stay healthy, stay safe, take care.